Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Josh, and today I wanted to come on and do another video about our Rav4 Prime because we have officially, you guys, crossed the 3-year mark of ownership with this car. We've owned it from, day one when it was brand new. And now that we have officially crossed that 3-year threshold, I wanted to do another video and just share some thoughts with you about how the last 3 years have gone, how the car is holding up, and whether or not we still love it as much as we did when it was new, and kind of what our long-term outlook on this car is. Now, before we get into anything else here, if you're new to the channel or you haven't seen my other Rav4 Prime videos, I have a full review that I did after 2 years of ownership with this car. I have a road trip video, I have a full Q&A video. There's a bunch of Rav4 Prime content here on the channel. And because I've covered a bunch in those other videos, today what I wanted to do is just kind of share 5 additional things that came to mind as I reflected back on 3 years of ownership with this vehicle. You're seeing those 5 things on screen, as always with all my videos. Those are going to be the chapters of this video, so if you want to skip back and forth between, repeat a certain chapter or whatever, you can do that using the chapter toggle that will be somewhere down here in the play bar. So yeah. Now, really quickly, before we get into any of the actual topics of the video, there is one thing I wanted to throw in right up front, and that is the purchase price that we paid for this vehicle. And the reason that I wanted to share it up front with you here is because I think a lot of my feelings about this car are based upon the price that we paid to acquire it. Now, if you know anything about the Rav4 Prime, you probably know that over the past 3 years, the prices of these cars have gone way up, and a lot of the incentives that were available on the Rav4 Prime when it came out are no longer available. So back at the time that we purchased it, this car had a sticker price of $38,100 MSRP, and that is what we paid for this vehicle. We didn't pay a markup or anything like that. But then on top of that, basically any PHEV at the time qualified for the full $7,500 tax credit. And on top of that, here in our home state, there was a $2,500 state rebate on top of that. And so although our purchase price, like our out-the-door price, was $40,000, after getting $10,000 of incentives back, our true out-of-pocket cost was only about $30,000 for this particular vehicle. So just wanted to throw that up front just so that you have that context as we talk about all the things that I love about this car and the way that we use this car. Just keep in mind that we paid a lot less for this car when we bought it than it would cost today. With that out of the way, again, let's dive into the 5 topics that I wanted to cover in this kind of reflection after 3 years. And we'll start with the first, which is overall as a daily driving appliance. And I have to tell you guys, as a daily driving appliance, you cannot do much better than a Rav4 Prime, because I think what's really special about this car and, PHEVs like this car is you really do get the best qualities of a full BEV with the best qualities of a standard super efficient gas hybrid. And what I mean by that is, for most people, myself included, you can do your daily driving all on EV mode. So, going to and from work, going to Target, going grocery shopping, picking up the kids from school, all that kind of stuff, the mundane daily driving tasks that we all do, you can do in full EV mode in this car. And while you're doing that, you have all the great attributes of a BEV or electric vehicle powertrain. It's really responsive. You don't have any kind of lag from a transmission or from a turbo or anything like that. You have a really quiet drive because electric motors just don't make the noise that a gas engine makes. And on top of that, of course, you have the environmental benefits. And so if you do a lot of driving throughout the week, my round trip commute to and from the office is 50 miles. And not only do I spend a lot less on gas in this car, but I also put out far fewer CO2 tailpipe emissions in this car than if I were to drive even a standard, hybrid RAV or something like my V8 GX460. But then on top of that, because it's a plug-in hybrid vehicle, when we want to go on a road trip, whether, I'm driving like from Austin here where I live in Austin to Dallas for work, or if we're just going, someplace for the weekend and we don't necessarily want to take one of our nicer cars, we can take this car, and because it can revert to being just a standard Toyota hybrid, we have all the attributes of a standard Toyota hybrid, which is incredibly efficient driving, and we don't have to worry about route planning around a charging network or worrying if the charger at a charging station is going to be working or anything like that. And even still running it as a hybrid, when you get to your destination, whether it's like a hotel or an Airbnb or whatever, you can usually plug in, whether it's, again, through a standard household outlet, or you can find a level 2 charger, and then you can charge your battery up, and while you're at your destination driving around, maybe you can do that in all EV mode as well. So the flexibility, I think, of a plug-in hybrid is really the best of both worlds at the moment. Now, let me be very clear here. I do fully expect that we will get to a point sometime in the next 5 to 10 years where EVs can really replace a gas car for most people, because your charging times are going to get cut down significantly, and battery chemistry will get to a point where a BEV will have, upwards of 500 miles of range on a charge, and so you'll be able to do all your driving with a BEV. But the fact of the matter is, at the moment, we're not there yet. And so for us, that's really where this Rav4 Prime has just been outstanding for us to own, to have the best of a hybrid and the best of a BEV. All right, next up, let's talk about the wear and tear and overall cosmetic condition of this car after 3 years of daily driving wear and tear on the car. We were lucky enough to have a warm winter day a couple days ago, so we washed the car thoroughly inside and outside. And let me throw some footage in here that I took after we did that, so you can see, again, the true condition of this car. All right, guys, here is the Rav4 Prime, and what we're going to do is a quick walk around outside and inside to look at cosmetic condition after 3 years, truly 3 years of daily driving wear and tear. And as you may know, if you have been with me here on the channel, this car does live outside in the elements. We live here in Texas, so during the winter it is freezing, during the summer it is boiling, and this poor car, unfortunately, because we only have two garage spaces and 2 other cars, this car has lived outside for about 95% of its life. There was a short period where it did live inside the garage when we only had 2 cars, but for most of its life it has lived out here. And all things considered, I think for being 3 years old and, living that kind of life for most of its life, it looks pretty good. Now, I will be the first to tell you that there is definitely wear and tear on this car. One of the things that you'll see on the front of this car, there is not a lot, but a decent amount of road rash. And that is because we live in Austin, Texas, where just construction is a constant thing here, and you also have a lot of different dirt and gravel roads. You have lots of weather events and things like that put gravel and all that kind of stuff on the road. So it's to be expected here in Texas that you're going to pick up some road rash over the lifetime of a car. This is a good example down here. This is a scratch on the silver kind of trim garnish that is on the Prime. You can see a little bit of it here as well. Since we washed the car, it's also been quite windy, so there might be some dust here and there on the car, and I apologize for that as well. But, all things considered, not bad. And then as we go around, we look at the hood, there are, again, some chips and real small ones here on the hood, but no major damage at all on this car. Same thing with the windshield. We had a cracked windshield at one point, replaced it with OEM Toyota glass down the side of the car. Not too bad. We don't have any major dings, dents, scrapes, scratches, nothing on this car. There's no exposed, metal body trim or anything like that on the car, from damage. One thing that we did do that I've gotten some questions about, we put on the OEM Toyota rain visors, and you can see these are OEM Toyota. These are not sold here in the US. I had to order them from a dealer in Canada. I don't know why they're not sold in the US, but I thought that added kind of a nice touch to the look of the car. That's a very Japanese thing. A lot of Japanese cars in Japan, owners will put that on the car. Coming around to the sides and back, again, same thing. You'll see some scratches here and there, but nothing super major at all. Plug-in hybrid badge, Prime badge. As you may know, these are no longer called Prime. These are now called PHEV. One thing we did add to the back here, this is a plastic bumper guard. This is from WeatherTech. It is low profile, and I really like this because, we use this car whenever we go away on vacations. This is the car that we leave at the airport. And when it gets, because we use it for that kind of duty, we're constantly putting suitcases in the back. And, unfortunately, sometimes things hit the lip of the bumper here, this protects it. This is probably coming up on, this is almost as old as the car. It's maybe faded a little bit because of the hot sun, but even still, it still looks quite good. WeatherTech makes great products. As you've probably seen, we have a Rav4 PHEV plate, vanity plate here in our state. Here's the other side. You will see some swirl marks as well, because sometimes I have to wash this car in a hurry and I don't, you know, I can't baby this the way that I baby my GX. So on some of these sail panels here, you might be able to see a little bit of that, but even that, not major. And any like, you know, swirl marks or anything, any of the paint imperfections on this car, they could very easily be removed if we took it to a detailer and they did like an actual polish on the car. I love the wheels on the SE as well. These are so easy to wash and clean, and they look so good. We never have curb wheels in our cars, so you won't find any damage on there. And then these are the Michelin Cross Climate 2 tires that we put on. I love these tires. They are just like the perfect tires for the Rav4 Prime for a 4-season climate. And here we are back to the front. So I don't know. I think, you know, for, again, living outside, we do obviously take really good care of our cars. And even though this one has not been babied the way my Lexus GX has, I think it's still in pretty good condition. So I don't know. What do you guys think? 3 years, daily driving wear and tear, about 24,000 miles, lives outside. But I think it still looks really good for its age and for, you know, the way that we use this car. All right, guys, moving on to the inside, let's take a look at the interior and see how it's held up. Now, the one thing you have to know, of course, about this car is this is a Rav4 Prime SE, and so we do have a more industrial, you know, kind of cheaper interior. I am perfectly okay with that. One, because this is a daily driver car and, you know, hard plastics are easier to keep clean. But more importantly than that, again, keeping in mind that we only paid $30,000 out of pocket for this car, that makes it a pretty cheap car. And so for that price, I am willing to deal with a cheaper interior, cloth seats, hard plastics, and things like that. And even though this is a cheap car, you know, one of our non-negotiables when it comes to car care and, you know, on our personal cars, we try to keep our cars to the best of our ability in showroom fresh condition. Now, that's going to be impossible for a daily driver car like this Rav, but we come into this car at least every 2 weeks, and we try to clean out, you know, actually go through, wipe down every surface, clean out all the binnacles and the cup holders and all those little areas where dirt and grime tends to build up in a car. The number one thing I cannot and will not tolerate in my cars is, you know, stuff getting built up in the cup holders. There's even a little bit here, and that's driving me nuts. There we go. I need everything in this car to be clean. I need it to be fresh. I need it to smell fresh. I need it to look good if, you know, I'm going to be bringing someone else into my car. And the other thing that we try to do, and we are rather anal about, is cleaning the steering wheel and the gear shift lever. Now, one thing that you've probably seen in like rental cars or other people's cars or used cars, you know, out there on the lots, the leather steering wheels, sometimes in cars that have not been properly cared for, they are like straight up shiny. They look like patent leather. And the reason that happens is whenever you grab hold of the steering wheel, your hand is transferring oils into the leather on that wheel. And if you don't clean off and, you know, kind of take out that oil on a regular basis, that's how your steering wheel gets shiny. And there is a point of no return. Even if, like, once you've reached that point where it looks like shiny patent leather, you are done. So 3 years in, 24,000 miles or so, I think everything in here still looks and feels really clean. And I don't know, you know, even though it's cheap and industrial and whatnot, I think for 3 years, it looks pretty good. What do you guys think? I'm happy with it. And because we've kept it in this kind of condition where everything still looks and feels new, it still smells really good in here, really fresh. You know, I have no problem driving this car for another 10 years if it'll, you know, 10, 15 years. I expect that it'll last another 10 or 15 years at least. And I will be very happy driving this in 10 to 15 years if I can keep it in, you know, even remotely this kind of condition. So yeah. All right, third thing, let's talk about the efficiency of this RAV4 Prime as both a hybrid vehicle and a plug-in hybrid vehicle. Now, one of the things that I've said before and that I do want to kind of call out right up front is, of course, with PHEVs, you can't ever really average your efficiency down to a single number because it all depends on what energy mix you're using to drive the car. So, for example, if you're driving it purely as an EV, your efficiency scores are going to be a lot different than if you're driving it as a pure gas vehicle. And then, of course, when you're blending the two and you're doing part of your drive in EV mode, part of your drive in hybrid mode, it all depends on what ratio, and mix you are doing that in. So what I'm going to share with you here are the two numbers solely as a hybrid and then solely as an EV, and then keeping in mind that you can kind of blend those together, but any which way. So as a hybrid vehicle, okay, in pure hybrid mode operation, I can do between 35 and 40 miles to the gallon, which is quite good for this car because this car is at least 600 pounds heavier than a standard RAV hybrid because of the battery. So one thing to keep in mind about the RAV4 Prime, and I said this before again, is that the RAV4 Prime operating as a hybrid vehicle in pure hybrid operation is a little bit less efficient than a standard RAV hybrid because of the additional weight. And then in EV mode, I've been able to do between 2.2 and 2.8 miles per kilowatt hour, which is also quite good. Now, 2.2 is on the lower side for the RAV4 Prime, but one of the things to keep in mind is most of my driving is on the highway at higher speeds where EVs and, battery electric vehicles like this tend to be way less efficient than doing, low speed city driving on the highway. But either way, regardless of what energy mix we're talking about, this is a super efficient car, whether we're talking gas or battery charge usage. And the funny thing about this car is, and you've heard me talk about this before if you've watched any of my other RAV4 Prime videos, is it is so incredibly difficult, you guys, to empty the gas tank in this car. And you definitely want to do that because gas can go stale and it can gum up your fuel lines, and that is a whole nightmare when that happens. The funny thing about this car, because it is so efficient and so many people can do their daily driving all in EV range, a tank of gas in this car can very easily last if you're not on top of it and really keeping an eye on how your gas tank is doing and how often you're filling it and emptying it. A tank of gas in this car could very easily last you over a year, and that is really, you want to empty your tank at least once every 3 to 4 months. And like right now, as we sit in the car, the needle is just above a quarter tank, but the full tank, starting at full in the car right now, is probably from about August or September of last year. And I'm filming this in early January. So it's just kind of insane how long it can take to empty a tank of gas. And you really need to be, make sure that you are constantly emptying and, refilling this car so your gas doesn't go stale, doesn't gum up your fuel lines. All right, next up, let's talk about mechanical reliability and battery health of this RAV4 Prime, because I've gotten a lot of questions about that, especially as we've approached and hit the 3-year mark with this car. And this is going to be a real quick topic because I can tell you guys right up front, we have not had one single issue with this car. Not one. Not even a squeak, not a rattle, nothing has gone wrong with this car in the first 3 years that we've owned it. And what's really interesting about that is that actually makes this RAV4 Prime more reliable, okay? More reliable than the 4Runner I owned and our V6 Camry, which has Toyota's legendary 2GR V6 engine. In the 4Runner, I never had any engine problems, but I had a few squeaks and rattles in the car, and then there was some part of the wheel liner or something that fell off the car shortly after I bought it. And so the 4Runner, I think, went into the shop for non-scheduled, like non-routine maintenance 2 or 3 times in the 4 years that I owned that. And then if you've been with me here on the channel and you watched the whole kind of Camry engine saga, we had an issue with the timing chain in our 2GR where it wasn't timed properly and it was causing all kinds of weird noises and kind of strange operation of the engine after 8 months of ownership on that Camry. So of all the cars that we've owned in recent years, this has been the most reliable. It has not ever had to go in for one anything unscheduled or non-routine maintenance wise. And for the battery health, I actually just took it in back in December before the car hit 3 years and asked the technicians to do a full analytics on the battery. And from what their systems told them, there is no meaningful degradation and the battery is in perfect operating condition for where it should be at 3 years. Now, typically you do expect with lithium-ion batteries, just like the battery in your phone or any other mobile device, that it will lose some of its life and kind of chargeability over time. But at least from what we've seen in this car, because we do make an effort to fully charge and fully discharge this car on a regular basis, we have not seen any meaningful degradation. Maybe a mile or two over the 3 years that we've had this car, but even that could also be attributed to the fact that we put different tires in this car about a year and a half ago. The Rav4 Prime, like many hybrids, comes from the factory with low rolling resistance tires because they want to make sure that you have the most efficient tire on your car. The problem with low rolling resistance tires is they don't drive all that great, and especially if you have all 4 seasons type weather the way that we do here, you really want a better tire with more grip, better contact patch, better kind of water evacuation ability. So about a year and a half ago, we put Michelin Cross Climate 2 tires on this car, and those are significantly heavier and grippier than the low rolling resistance tires that came on the car. And so I would actually attribute the slight loss of range that we've seen over our ownership term with the tires and not necessarily the battery. And we still are able to get well over 40 miles of range in this car with the tires, with the battery being 3 years old. So we have absolutely no concerns there. And on this note, I do want to address something that I've gotten in the comments and emails, which is people are always asking about why my range estimate on the car, especially when the car is 100% fully charged, why my numbers are lower than what yours might be or what you might have seen online and in forums. And there's a very simple explanation for that. So when this Rav4 Prime is fully charged, like 100% fully charged, and the car stops accepting charge from the EVSE, my trip computer will show anywhere between like 38 and 43 miles of range available. And a lot of people out there, when they see that in my videos and such, they say, I think something's wrong with your car because I have a Rav4 Prime, or over in on the forums people are able to get like high 40s, low 50s in terms of what their range estimates are. And the reason that mine are lower is simply because the trip computer is calculating what it thinks your range would be based upon your driving habits, based upon your climate, and anything else on the car like tires. And because about 85% of my driving is high-speed highway driving between 60 and 80 miles an hour, this Rav4 Prime runs more inefficiently than some other cars out there. So nothing is wrong with the car. Don't worry about any of that. Battery health is perfect for what it should be at 3 years. The reason that my numbers are lower is because of my driving. All right, and finally, let's talk about our long-term outlook and long-term plans for this Rav4 Prime. And here, I do want to let you know right up front that we didn't end up purchasing an extended warranty for the car, not because we couldn't get a price that we thought was fair, but rather because at the end of last year, as you may know if you've watched some of my other videos, we had a kind of a family health crisis. My mother is going through a lot health-wise. And so, unfortunately, the deadline to buy a warranty just kind of passed us by, and we didn't even realize it until it was too late. Now, I'm not actually super upset about that. I wanted to buy an extended warranty just to kind of hedge my bets against anything happening, but like I said, in a previous section of this video, this has been just an incredibly reliable car. And there are a lot of people out there with Rav4 Prime, specifically the 2021, like ours, that have well over 100,000 miles on them and have not, nobody's had any serious issues. And, because this drivetrain minus the larger EV drive battery comes right out of any other Rav4 hybrid, and the overall system architecture of this car dates back to 1997 with the original Toyota Prius, there's not really much that goes wrong with these cars until you get up to like the 15 and 20 year mark. And the fact of the matter is, if nothing goes wrong with this car until way beyond the 10-year mark, an extended warranty would have expired anyway. So personally, I'm not too upset that we didn't end up buying an extended warranty. And the other part of that is this car has saved us so much money in terms of operating costs and, gas savings. And we've been able to get certain perks in terms of like cheaper parking passes downtown because we have a clean energy vehicle. And so if I ever ended up with a big repair bill, I just wouldn't be too upset. And in terms of our long-term plans for the car, we fully intend to keep this thing for as long as it'll run, and or until, you know, the battery falls out or the wheels fall off or whatever like that. And there's a few reasons for that. One, again, going back to the purchase price of this car, this was such an incredible value for us when we bought it that it was a no-brainer. And because of how expensive all cars have gotten, but specifically how expensive a new RAV4 Prime would be, like literally to replace this car with the same model, same trim, in 2025, the 2025 model year, would be $17,000 more. So there's literally no reason for us to get rid of this car or trade it in for anything else. And the other thing is, if you look at the auto market right now and you look at what else you can buy for $30,000, you can barely get a Civic Hybrid for $30,000. Most Priuses are going to be above $30,000, and even a base model Camry Hybrid, nothing on it, is about $30,000 as well. So for us, we're going to keep this car until the wheels fall off. And the funny thing that happened about a week before I came on to film this video is, like many other corporate workers and workers in technology, my company has called everybody back to the office 5 days a week. And like I said earlier, my commute on a daily basis is 50 miles to and from our office downtown. And so I'm going to be driving this car, or I'm going to be doing 250 miles of driving every single week. And to be able to do that in this car, plug in at home and plug in at the office, means I'm not going to pay a single cent for gas. And I honestly don't really know what we would do if we didn't have this car, because I would have to pay for gas. I would have to, I would be polluting a lot more. And actually, even a standard RAV4 hybrid, I would still have to fill up gas twice a month in that car, even with, how efficient the standard RAV hybrid is. So yeah, we fully intend to keep this car. It's been an amazing 3 years. It doesn't even feel like it's been 3 years that we've owned this car, but it has been, and it's just been such an amazing vehicle to own and a companion to have. And if you're in the market for a RAV4 Prime, as much as I bellyache about the cost of them and how expensive cars are getting, there is a lot to love about the RAV4 Prime. It's not going to make sense for everyone and everyone's, situation and budget, and just kind of, you have to do the math for yourself on a RAV4 Prime, but if the math and the numbers make sense and you can afford it, it is a great car. Anyway, thank you guys again for watching. I always appreciate it. Questions and comments, you know what to do with those. If you want to send me a longer message than you can fit in a comment, I have an email. You guys can write to me at any time at that email address. I love hearing from you all. And so many of the emails I get to that email address, turn into videos that we do on the channel. And all the emails that you guys send me and all the comments, they tell me what you guys are interested in and what you want to know more about. So anyway, leave a comment, email me. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next one. Have a great one and take care.